Welcome into TNT Twincast. We appreciate you guys checking out one of our videos. Do us a solid, like, subscribe, and hit us with a comment down below. It's the best way for us to grow our channel. We appreciate you guys so much, and go Noles. All right, welcome into TNT Twincast. This is the Garnet and Goal Line podcast. I am Tory, and that is Thomas. How are you this morning, sir?
Doing great. Doing great. How are you?
I'm I'm pretty good, man. A little tired. We got back from our Tally trip. So Thomas and his wife Christina and me and my wife Beth drove down to Tally to spend time with our kin and to go to the Florida State Duke game. So Florida State pulls out the win, 38-20, in a game that really felt like Florida State needed to kind of get the ball rolling as far as scoring goes. There was not a lot of scoring in the first three quarters of this game, and you really didn't see Florida State start to flex really until they ran Jordan. And I know we're going to get into that, but Thomas, what were some of the keys to the Florida State Duke game? Yeah, so what are your thoughts?
So I'm just gonna throw out a couple things, a couple takes. One starting with the incredible atmosphere.
Mm.
Duke was alive. It was very cool. I think it was my first sold out ranked conference game. Night game. Again, the atmosphere was electric. To your point, offensively, we did struggle, but I kind of felt like that was kind of what we needed. I know outside of the program and outside of the fan base, the perception is going to be, oh, look, they're struggling again. But for the Noles, I felt like it was a perfect way to kind of put us in a position to where we had to overcome some adversity. You know, if you watch the broadcast, Herb Street kind of calls back on the LSU game as far as adversity, and like those kind of games are what puts Florida State in a position to overcome when the other team gets an advantage. So I felt like it was another example of how this team is mentally focused and they kind of have that next play mentality. It's we get the ball 3 and out, they get it, they manage to get a score, kick a field goal, all of a sudden it's 10-0. Um, I kind of felt like once we scored that first touchdown with Jordan, I kind of felt like we were, even though the score was still 17-7, I felt like we were back in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or 17-10, we were back in it. And then of course Jordan throws that awful pick, but then there's your adversity for not just Jordan but also the offense. Because just like you said with the struggling, they were kind of struggling a little bit to kind of get the ball moving and find some consistency. I felt like Duke was the the penalties and some of the calls. I felt like it was bad on both sides,
Yeah.
honestly. But particularly at the beginning of the game with that 41-yard run, I think it was 41 yards, but for that 41-yard touchdown run, everybody in the stands saw that terrible holding call that
Yeah.
we didn't get the flag for. But so there was some questionable calls on both sides. I think that late game pass interference was a little soft. I feel like that could have been a makeup call from the beginning of the game, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever. As far as like more detailed look at the game, um, I got to be honest. If Benson's not going to be able to be the guy, I love the running back by committee. I love seeing more than four guys or more than three guys or even two guys touch the ball. As far as the running game goes, we saw a lot of faces out there. So who knows? Maybe down the stretch we'll see that Trey Benson um, game where he goes for 100 yards, 150 yards, or whatever. But for right now, I feel like running back by committee is what's working. Um, what do you think, Tori? Anything you got?
Yeah, so a few things about that game that I really liked. A few things that we haven't really seen this team do so far, which I think continues to make them a very challenging team to scout if you are an opposing DC. Want to start on the defensive side of the ball. I thought Shaheem Brown had perhaps his best game as a Nole. It's great to see him develop. It's great to see him, become a better player. That pick really kind of set the tone. There are two or three moments in this game where huge plays are made by guys that are kind of still in that are they going to develop tier. You've got the kick return by Deuce Spann that we can all point to. You have the Shaheem Brown pick. And I'm sure there's more, but those are the two plays that really stick out to me as far as huge plays being made by guys that are not necessarily on the top tier of this team. And then you've got the tight ends, kind of going back to what I said about this team being really hard to scout. The tight ends were really the centerpiece of the game plan, in my opinion. It kind of seemed like Norvell felt that they had something there. Biscuit had a really good catch. Kyle Morlock had a really good catch, and you ended up seeing, excuse me, Jaheim Bell finished the game with 8. A huge. I think he had like 56 yards or whatever, but still, the fact that we've now had a game where you can really tell that the tight ends were at the centerpiece of the game plan, I think is great for Jordan's development. The first few weeks, a lot of the fan base was complaining that he's only throwing go routes to 14-4, like he's got to start reading the field. Well, he read the field against Duke. I mean, he made some great throws. When you're throwing it to tight ends in the middle of the field, or when you're throwing it to tight ends on quick out routes, that kind of tells me that you're reading the entire field. You're looking at your one-on-ones, and you were trying to take advantage of that. So I just loved that the tight ends had such a big day. We've all felt really great about that group, and it was just really good to see them kind of get their day to shine. I mean, I'm kind of a bias on the whole tight
Right.
end thing, but love me some tight ends, and really glad that they had
Right.
such a great showing.
Yeah. So for me, everybody knows about the kick return by Deuce Spann. I feel like that kind of changed the momentum of the game. It kind of gave the gave him the groove back a little bit. It put the crowd back in the game. And it was just in time. It was exactly what we needed. It was 17-10. We just threw a terrible pick, and we managed to get the ball back after the is it a field goal or a punt? But yeah, he was able to return that kickoff, and that got us 14 to 17.
Yeah,
And I felt like that really changed the momentum of the game. I felt like that was kind of like it was another look at the team's kind of next man up, who's going to make a play mentality of this team. Like you talked about the Shaheem Brown interception, the Deuce Spann kick return, and then of course down the stretch just kind of sealed the game. You had the big 4th and 3, and the defense was able to stop them. Which, don't get it twisted. The kickoff return, was good because we needed those points, but I felt like that 4th and 3 on the back end of the game is really what kind of turned the tide, because they score right there. Don't forget that during that drive, it's 20-17 right now, and Duke is driving, and they get down to the goal line, and if they score, it's 27-17 going into the fourth, and it just feels a lot different. So much like the kick return, and how it kind of changed how the game was going. I felt like that 4th and 3 call was huge for the team, and it was huge for the defense. Um, but going back to Jordan Travis, I'm going to read out his stat lines real quick. He was 27-36 for 268 yards, one pick, bad pick. We all saw it. And then he was 10 carries for 62 yards. Um, I'm just going to straight up say it. I feel like for the most part, Duke's defense was playing really well. But once Jordan Travis kind of uh, pivoted to a little bit more of a running game, I kind of felt like we had him on skates.
Yep.
And I'm just gonna say, I feel like this offense, when Jordan Travis is able to mix up the run and the pass, I feel like this offense is elite. And I don't think that there's a team in college football, when we're playing that way, I don't think there's a team in college football that can stop us. Um, so it was nice to see Jordan Travis run the ball a little bit. I've seen him throughout this year, and sometimes trying to press, or sometimes trying to you know maybe prove to himself that
Mm-hmm.
he can throw the ball. He'll look at his first, second, third, read, and he's still trying to figure out a way to throw the ball. We need to get him. Norvell needs to get him back into that mentality where after that third read, you're going. He seems so much more effective when you see him tuck the ball, run a little bit, and then slide.
Yep.
And instead of having like a bad pick um, or incomplete pass, he's able to turn it into like a gain of 4, a gain of 5, or even a
Mm-hmm.
first down. So, Jordan Travis from this game, um, we just need that element to stay there because I feel like that kind of opens up space um, at other points for the offense.
100%. So let's get into a topic that Florida State fans have kind of discussed. Been going around Twitter a little bit. I've seen it a little bit on Facebook, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts. Man, what does Florida State do at running back right now? You made a comment about running back by committee. I mean, I really like 29. I think that Rod Hill's going to be a really good player. I like what we're getting out of 9. I think he is a dynamic piece, um, and how Mike Norvell can utilize him all around the field. I think it's great. You can use him in the screen game. You can use him in the swing pass game. You can use him in just about everything, which is great. I'm just not seeing a lot out of 3, man. He just doesn't seem to. And I know that he had a 200-yard game. I can't think it was against Syracuse, but that's Syracuse, man. Like, if you're a great back, you got to show up in the big games. And he just doesn't seem to be decisive as far as where he's trying to go with the ball. And you're seeing that out of the other 2 guys, the other 3 guys. You're
Yeah,
seeing 29 hit the hole and gain 5 or 6 and be totally okay with that. You're seeing 26, make good plays. He's a young guy. I just like what they're doing, but I'm just concerned about 3. He just hasn't looked. He hasn't been playing running back very well. Like, athlete wise, elite, but he just hasn't been playing running back all that well. And let's hope he improves.
yeah. Again, going back to my comment about running back by committee, from kind of a macro standpoint for this team, I think that they should just stick to running back by committee and understand that these plays will happen. Like what happens if in the ACC title or, maybe in the CFP, when we need our guys to shine, you see Benson break off, a 55-yard touchdown run, so I think he'll get his when we need it. But as far as being like a 1,000-yard rusher this year, I just don't think it's going to happen. Not with other guys in this running back room able to make plays. But just like how you said earlier about game planning, how do you game plan against a specific back when they're throwing it to Toafili or giving it to Rod or the other guys on the in the running back room? So I think the team is more effective right now with the running back by committee, and I just think that they should kind of stick with that, and you know they'll find their plays.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had over 100 yards rushing, but it was between like 5 different guys. So I think Benson will get he'll make some plays, but I don't think he's going to be like the bell cow rusher. It's too far in the season for that to. I mean, unless he just absolutely explodes next week and runs for 200 yards for the next 6 weeks, which would be cool, but unlikely. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not really worried about the running back room, honestly. Of course, you want to see bigger numbers, but I think they're all good, and they're all going to be able to make plays.
Yeah, just a great game, great environment. It was great to see Florida State kind of pour it on. I know we've seen a little bit in the media that Riley getting hurt. If he wouldn't have gotten hurt, Florida State or Duke would have won. I think it would have been close, but I don't think Duke would have won. I think the final probably would have been something like 38-28 or 38-31, or I mean, it for sure would have been a really close finish there at the end of the game. But I'm hard pressed to think that a guy that had thrown for 61 yards in 2.5 quarters was all of a sudden going to start pouring it on against a Noles defense that really got better as the game went on. But Well, well, not nah, for now. So just got to take it for what
Look
it
at the
is.
look at the end of the day. He was 7 for 16, 69 yards and a pick. I think his QBR was like 52.7 or something. So you can't really say with 100% confidence that he was like tearing us up through the air. He most definitely wasn't. And then if you pivot to the running game, he had one run for 13 yards. So it was really just Jacquez Moore that was able to kind of keep the running game going. Everybody else on the team, I mean, Jordan Waters had 13 carries for 39 yards. Jalen Coleman had a couple good runs, but it wasn't really Riley Leonard was crushing it. I think going back to that fourth down call earlier, I think there's a chance that Riley Leonard actually scores that touchdown. Um, but I still think that the offense was in a position to where they weren't going to be stopped, and um, we would kind of be in a shootout with Duke, and I don't think that they would have been able to score more points, even with that, even with that 10 point advantage going into the fourth. So ultimately, I don't think it was going to matter that much. It wasn't like he was going to throw for 350 yards and then they lost him. You could tell that which I was a little surprised about, honestly. I'm going to be a little bit critical of Duke here, but I was a little surprised that, the national media was saying, will he play? Won't he play? And I'm interested to see what the Duke football program was thinking there, because when you put in Henry, I forget how to say his last name, Bellin the fourth maybe, but he just seemed totally unprepared to play in this football game. I mean, it was almost immediate when he got onto the field. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't run the ball anymore. We kind of closed the gap on that. But to go into a game where it's a game time decision for your quarterback, um, the game was basically over after Riley Leonard came out, and it wasn't because of his athleticism. It was I felt like it was more his kind of leadership and what he brings to the team, that kind of sucked the energy out of Duke. But then Mike Elko in his post game, he said that really had nothing to do with it, and it had a lot more to do with that 15 play 97-yard drive to take the lead, and then we give the ball back to Duke, and then they immediately 3 and out. We get the ball back, so I feel like it was more like kind of how the game started to unfold, and less of Riley Leonard getting kicked out. Even though I know that's what the national media would like to say, um, but yeah, my take is it would not have mattered, and the
Right.
stats kind of prove it.
Right. Um, yeah, so just kind of turning the page on that game. Huge win for Mike Norvell and his staff, a ranked ACC win, which I think is really important. I said before the game that Duke is a really well coached team, and it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. That defense is really good and really well coached, and they certainly gave Florida State fits for 2.5 quarters. So let's dive into a little ACC chaos, Thomas. What do the ACC standings look like as of today, and where are we going with all that?
So I am pretty excited about to talk about this. I think it's really interesting when you look at the teams below Florida State in the ACC standings and kind of what their schedules look like and how things are going to unfold. Of course, you got Florida State at number one, right? And then after that, you've got UNC, you've got Louisville, and then you've got Duke, and they're all kind of trading spots. But when you go and you look at their schedules, um, Duke's got a lot to prove. They lost to Florida State, which was the top team in the ACC, but over the next couple weeks, Duke has to play UNC, and I think they play Louisville next week, and then UNC 2 weeks after that. So we're going to find out a lot about this Duke team, and unfortunately, playing Riley Leonard against Florida State, and him getting knocked out of the game and seeming to, further injure that ankle, um, depending on how long he's out, that could, that could cost Duke their season. Um, they can't really lose to either of those teams, and since they won't have Riley Leonard, who knows? Louisville's in a similar situation. Over the next couple of weeks, they're kind of. I think they play Miami and maybe UNC, but I'm not quite 100% on that. And then for UNC, really for Louisville and UNC, it's really just no more mistakes. You can't lose to Virginia. You can't lose to Pitt. You can't have any more of those if you want to get in the ACC championship. UNC is still my pick to get to Charlotte, and I think Drake May is probably too good to drop another game. Um, so for now, for me, UNC is still that pick, but that that 2, 3, and 4 spot in the ACC standings, they have to basically be perfect the rest of the way. And if they're not, then it is absolute chaos outside of the number one team in the ACC. So, it could be I could go with a who knows, or I could still pick UNC, which is still going to be my pick.
Which do you think is more likely? Florida State playing Louisville in the ACC title, or Florida State playing Duke in the ACC title?
Well, let's look at their schedule really quick. So Duke's got so Duke has that's not Duke, that's Miami. Yeah, so Duke has Louisville, which is going to be a ranked ACC game. They have to win that. Then they play Wake Forest, and then they play UNC, and then Virginia and Pitt to finish out the year. So that Louisville game and that UNC game is critical. And we just kind of touched on how Duke is potentially not going to have Riley Leonard for those games. So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Then you go over to Louisville. Again, they have Duke. They really just don't have a lot going on. They play a ranked Duke, and then they play Virginia Tech, and they play Virginia, and they play Miami, and then they finish out the year against Kentucky like always. So that's probably the weakest ACC stretch. I mean, you have that
Mm-hmm.
ranked game against Duke, but if Duke can't field Riley Leonard, um, that gives Louisville definitely a chance to win that game. And if Louisville can win that game, maybe Miami is ranked by the time they play, but maybe not if we beat them. It depends on if that game happens before or after us.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, Louisville, they play Duke and then Virginia Tech, Virginia, Louisville, and or Miami, and then Kentucky. So
It's gonna
man,
be it's gonna be completely insane if UNC and Louisville are both tied, and those two teams don't play.
yeah,
So what if like a top 10 ranked UNC gets spotted into third place, and a Louisville team that is not ranked, even though they will be ranked at that time because they're going to win so many games because they don't play anybody. Um, it would just be really terrible if you were a UNC fan and all of a sudden, you know, you have one of the best years you've had in a while, and you get unseated by a Louisville team that probably doesn't deserve to be there, but because of the luck of the draw and because of how they decided to plan out the ACC games, just gets kind of a cakewalk. But I mean, it's not
yeah,
like Louisville's a bad team. They beat Notre Dame bad. Um, I think for Louisville, the benefit for all of us is that Duke and Miami are better than we thought they were going to be, and Louisville has to play both Duke and Miami. So that's that. Louisville might come out of it 3-3 and out of that dialogue, and then at that point you'll have UNC and Duke and Miami really kind of fighting for that spot. So it's really exciting as we come down to the end of the ACC. Like you said, Florida State's at 5-0. They have a 2-game lead for first, which is great. I know we have big dreams for this team, but if we drop an ACC game, it's not the end of the world. I do not think that we're going to do that. So I think we're going to be good there. But yeah, really exciting as we come down to the finish. Was there anything else ACC related that you wanted to discuss?
yes. So for the back end of UNC schedule, and I felt like this was interesting. So they just dropped that game to Virginia. Then they play Georgia Tech. That's going to be a win. It better be for this for the Tar Heels. And then they play Campbell, and then they play Duke, and then they play Clemson and NC State. And I think that Clemson game is interesting. Obviously Clemson's had their struggles this year, but they still have all these athletes. So I think that is an interesting game. Um,
Right.
I would probably say that UNC is going to have a tougher drive to the ACC title. Um, Louisville's back end is, um, but I don't see any games on there that's necessarily a loss for UNC. So
Hmm.
again, they're still my pick, and I feel like they're going to end the year somewhere in like 12, 11, or 10 for the ACC championship.
Yeah.
Maybe if we get lucky, maybe they'll be inside the top 10. If they're inside the top 10, then that's definitely a strong enough game to punch our ticket into the college football playoff. But if we're undefeated and we beat, it doesn't matter who we play in the ACC championship. If we're undefeated and we win that game, we should get in. So
I
I
think
think Vegas
because
Vegas has us. If we go undefeated, Vegas has us going into number three.
oh nice. So I think that there is because of the way that the finish looks like here in the ACC. I have no doubt at all that whatever team Florida State plays, they will be ranked, because whoever gets there is going to have to be 7-1, 5-2, but 7-1 really seems like what they need to do really to get to that title game. That's why I've been saying that if Florida State beats Wake Forest and Pitt, you'd have to think that Pitt game solidifies themselves. So maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but I would be surprised if when Florida State beats Pitt to move to 7-0 in the league, that doesn't lock them into one of those title game spots. But yeah, so we're gonna
I
go
think if
ahead.
Florida State wins, sorry, one more thing.
No,
I
you're
think
good.
if honestly, I think if Florida State has a two-game lead, I feel like when they win at Wake Forest, that should lock them in. Obviously that's like a worst case scenario if somehow we get upset by Pitt, but I think that winning Wake Forest with a two-game lead in the ACC would kind of lock us in, and God forbid any team below us take another loss. Because then
Well,
you're
yeah,
going to see Florida State get in by technicality.
yeah. If Virginia
Anyway,
Tech, Duke,
that's it for
UNC,
mine.
right? Yeah. So if Virginia Tech, Duke, UNC, or Louisville, if any of them lose an ACC game, they're out. So it'll be really exciting to see kind of how this finishes up. All right, so we're gonna move on to AP Top 25. So we had a lot of teams in the top 25 lose. Let me pull it up real quick. So we have your top four are going to be Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State. You've got Washington at 5, OU at 6. So some of the teams that lost and where they went to. So Penn State lost to Ohio State and went all the way down to 10. They dropped 3 spots. I think that's pretty fair. I mean, they lost to Ohio State, who was number 3. I think at 10, Penn State is 6-1. I still think they have a great chance to finish out the year strong. I don't think that they're being punished too bad for that loss, moving down 3 spots, sitting at 10. What do you think, Thomas?
I mean, I kind of think that we're talking about Penn State.
Yeah, yeah. They were at
I mean,
7. They lost to Ohio State, went down to 10. I think that's pretty fair.
oh yeah, that's fair. I think both teams looked okay.
Yeah.
You've got a really interesting situation going on in the Big Ten where, with the leaders and legends or whatever they're calling it, where you've got Michigan and Ohio State in the same category. You've got all those teams in the same side. So, when I'm gonna get a little tin hat here, but with Florida State trying to say that, oh, let's just say that UNC loses again or Duke loses again, or by some chance that ACC championship game is against like an unranked team, everyone's going to be saying, "Oh, it's an easy win for the conference championship, so that shouldn't push you further into the CFP." But if they're going to play Iowa or something like that for the Big Ten championship, I think that's kind of and Florida State plays, a top 10 team. That's kind of what causes the flip between 3 to 4.
Mm.
I think a top 10 ACC win is a higher caliber win than beating up on Iowa. So you've kind of got the situation in the Big Ten that's interesting, where like that last game of the year for the Big Ten, you know, might not be strong enough to lock in that 3 spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Michigan will probably be at 1 or 2. I think the hope for Florida State fans are that they're at 2, and Florida State, slips into that 3 spot so that they don't have to play UGA. Even though we really don't know what we have in Georgia at this point, they lost, Brock Bowers for the year, so we'll have to see.
To be
Talented
honest,
bunch.
I don't think that there's a yeah, exactly, but I don't think that there's a single team in like the top 5 that I feel is totally dominant. Like I don't feel like there's a team in college football right now that would run this Florida State team off the field.
I agree.
Georgia looked really good against Kentucky, but when you look at it position by position, I think we've got a better quarterback than Georgia. I think we've got better receivers than Georgia. And then you go to Michigan. That's probably at quarterback. That's probably the only spot that I'm not 100% on, because I think McNamara is a special guy, and I think he kind of drives the bus for this Michigan team. Again, Georgia and Michigan don't have a single ranked win yet. They haven't played a single ranked team. We'll get to see Michigan against Ohio State at the end of the year to kind of decide who plays in the Big Ten title. But and then Washington, everyone wants to talk about Penix, but last week they didn't score a single offensive touchdown,
Yeah, they
which
didn't
kind of
look
gave
great.
Florida State that 30+ point record going into a 14th game. So there's just not a single team in college football right now that I think would blow out this Florida State team, which gets me kind of excited for our chances in the CFP. I think that even if we get into the college football playoff, for me that's the ceiling. I
I
never
agree.
counted this team as being a national championship team, but I did think that they could potentially be, a top four, top five best team in college football this year. But it's kind of lining up to where I just don't see a team that's going to blow out this Florida State team. So if they get into the college football playoff, even though it sounds crazy to say this, I would rather play Michigan or Ohio State than Georgia. Um, so you want to be in that 2 or that 3 spot. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of my little take on the top 4, top 5. Um,
Sure. So, just gonna blow through these really quick. North Carolina lost to Virginia. They dropped from 10 to 17. I mean, I like UNC as a team, but I think that losing to a Virginia team that was 1-5 um, should maybe hurt a little bit more than that. But again, I think this UNC team is pretty good. That's not. That's not based on my opinion of that team. That's based on my opinion of, man, getting beat by Virginia at home. Can you believe that game was at home for UNC? What a disaster!
yeah, I
My
think I read
gosh.
somewhere. I think I read somewhere that was the worst loss in Mac Brown's UNC career.
Yeah, crazy, nuts, absolutely insane. Duke
I
drops
can't believe.
from
Sorry to like shoot from the hip here. Sorry to kind of shoot from the hip, but I just can't believe what's going on with Southern Cal. I mean, I thought they were a top 10 team. Once I noticed that they couldn't play defense, I kind of knew it was over. But could you imagine if Caleb Williams just like sits out the rest of the year? That would be shocking.
Get ready to be shocked then, because I think that's the direction we're headed here.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah, I think
Anyway.
Caleb's gonna pack that in and get ready for the draft. At least that's what I would do. I mean, he doesn't have anything left to prove. He doesn't have anything left to really
Hmm.
play for. Okay, so Tennessee got beat by Alabama, right? Yeah, they dropped from 17 to 21. And then the biggest mover, well, so it would be UNC, but you've got USC moved down 6 spots. They were at 18. They went to 24. I don't think USC should be ranked. They're terrible. They can't stop anybody from scoring, and they have quite a tear coming up too. They've got like Oregon. They've got some really really tough games coming up where, I mean, like, if UNC can't stop anybody from scoring, they're gonna have a really hard time trying to keep that game close. But exciting stuff in the AP Top 25. I think the top four is just about what you want. Um, you've got Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State. You've got six undefeated teams. I know I've seen a lot in the news that, oh man, they're all going to finish the year and not drop any games. I don't think that's gonna. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to see OU drop a game. I think you're going to see. I think the current top four is pretty much what it is until Michigan plays Ohio State. Let's just say wins that game. Ohio State probably drops to 5 or 6, and then they'll probably slide in Washington or OU, depending on how those two teams look. But yeah, exciting, man. We're gonna go ahead. What was there anything else you wanted to get into before we moved on to recruiting?
I just wanted to talk about that graphic that they sent out in the middle of the game. I know a lot of Florida State fans are talking about it. It gave Florida State just a 43% chance to make the playoff if all these teams stay undefeated. That is not going to happen. Typically, we don't finish a college football season with that many undefeated teams. So just take that graphic and throw it away because um, you're going to finish the year with maybe one, maybe two, maybe not even three, but you're not going to finish the year with that many undefeated teams. It's not going to happen. So just take that graphic and throw it out. Don't even worry about it. It's
Did
stupid anyway.
Did you watch the TV broadcast?
I did.
Did you
I did.
watch when that graph came up and Herb Street was like, I don't know where this thing came from, but this is not gonna happen. Ignore this. I don't have anything to do with this. That I thought that was so funny because it's absurd, right? And to finish a huge Florida State win with that kind of a graphic, you brought up tinfoil hats. It kind of makes you think like what's going on here.
Right.
But it was cool how Herb Street was like, whoa, that's don't take that seriously. I don't know where that came from. They didn't show me that beforehand. That's not my opinion. Ignore that. Which it
Right.
is. It is insane, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
we will have to see. All right, so we're going to move on to recruiting. Some really exciting stuff occurred over the last couple days. Um, we'll start with the bad part. So Florida State missed out on 5-star LJ McCray. Florida State was pretty deep into that recruitment. You know, I'm not sure. Florida State was probably, you know, if somebody gives me the truth serum here, I'm thinking Florida State's probably like maybe second in this one, but probably third. I think LJ McCray is a freak. He ended up going to Florida, which is a loss. You know, if you're a Florida State fan, because then you're gonna have to see him multiple times through his career. Really great player. You hope that Florida State doesn't shut that one down and they continue to try to recruit him. I think that Florida is going to have some really tough games here soon, and I think that will open the door for some negative recruiting against the Florida staff. Not saying anything about a flip. You just never really know. My only point is that Florida is coming up to some games here that they will probably lose. So on the flip side, for the Noles, you had 5-star 2025 DT Armando Blunt. Some rumors had been coming out that there was potentially a flip coming. I felt pretty good about it, but also Cristobal is an ace on the trail, and I know that he's going to do everything that he can to fight for his guys and to try to keep them in the class. So the news came out that Blunt was going to reclassify from 2025 to 2024, which makes him an even more attractive prospect for Miami and for the Noles. Both teams really trying to solidify the inside. Ends up getting the flips from a Miami commit to Florida State when he reclassified into the 2024 class. Ended up keeping his 5th-star. So Florida State flips a 5-star interior lineman out of Miami. Just huge, just totally huge. Probably, I know a lot of Florida State fans are going to point to Lester or KJ as the most important piece in this class. I think it's Blunt. I think Florida State really, really needed really a boon as far as line of scrimmage recruiting goes. O-line's been doing well. O-line has their guys. We like what we have on the bench. We like what we have as far as the developmental players on that side of the ball. On the D line, you know that we're going to lose quite a bit at the end of this year. You hope that Farmer stays. Then you'll have Farmer and Daryl Jackson starting 1 and 2 respectively. I think that's a really great top, but what do you have underneath that? And bringing in Blunt, a guy who Bud Elliott of Nolecast and of 24/7 Sports thinks that he can contribute early for the Noles, which I think is a big deal as well. Being able to get a rotational piece out of the high school ranks for Florida State in this staff right now is really important. So they complete the flip for Armando Blunt and add the 5-star defensive tackle to their class on 24/7 Sports. This moves Florida State to the number 4 spot. You have the 4-star DB out of Miami, Jamari Howard, who's going to be committing soon. Florida State is the heavy favorite in that, so expect a strong finish for the Noles. If they do land Howard, that will mean that Florida State will move ahead of Florida. That means they will nab the number 3 class in all the land, so that's really exciting. But that's it for our recruiting. Did you want to get into a little bit of Wake Forest, or do you want to save that for a different video?
We'll save that for a different video.
Okay, cool. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to get to before we go ahead and shut this one down?
Not really. I'm as excited for the rest of the year. I'm excited to see what happens in the ACC. It's been a great football season. It feels like it's flying by. It's crazy. You wait all year for it to happen, and then it starts flying by. So just excited to see how the year's going to continue to unfold.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. This has been the new episode of the Garnet and Goal Line podcast. You all have a great week, and Go Noles.
Go Noles.